Hey, it's Chris back with another Island conversation here on Peaks Island Radio. Today we talk to Shannon Heaton. She's coming out to Peaks Island for St. Pat's on Peaks Island, part of the Long Winter's Night concert series that's happening March 14th. That's tomorrow, 7 p.m. at the new Brackett Church. She'll be joined by husband Matt Heaton and the band Ojizo from Tokyo. They're a traditional Irish folk band. In this conversation, you'll hear all about Shannon Heaton's background, what drew her to traditional Irish music, how traditional Irish music has made an impact worldwide, how she got to know the folks from Ojizo, and then also two pieces, one by Shannon and Matt Heaton, and then the other by Ojizo, coming up at the end of this podcast. Shannon, thanks so much for joining me today. I am so glad that you are coming out to Peaks Island around St. Patrick's Day and that you're going to be sharing your music with us. I'd love to start our conversation there and what you and the folks that are joining you are going to bring to Peaks Island on the 14th.
Sure. So Matt and Shannon Heaton, we play Irish music here in Boston, and we've gotten to know our friends in Ojizo, who live in Tokyo, through Irish music. You know, this is music that has traveled all over the world, and they're a wonderful band, and we've collaborated with them in different ways over the last 12 years. I have traveled with them twice. In Japan, Matt joined me once with our kid last year, and we're really excited that they're coming to our neck of the woods. For once, we get to be the hosts, and they're only going to be here for a short time, so we wanted to really pick some special places. We're going to be playing at our beloved local folk music club, Club Passim, in the Boston area, our favorite place to play here. We're going to be playing in Vermont, a beautiful matinee in South Pomfret, Vermont. We thought that would be nice and cozy, a real New England experience. And really, my first pick, for the weekend to round it off was Peaks Island. I was really hoping that the timing would work out. Just delighted. I thought it would be something really unique, a chance for them to see this, a part of New England that is sort of exotic and special even for those of us in New England. It's an adventure to get there. It's a beautiful place. And just the way that the ocean feels and looks this time of year, I thought for coming from Japan that they could really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's terrific. And you said you've been working together for 12 years. So outside of your trip to Japan and then also them coming here, where else have you collaborated together?
Yeah, so our friendship began over 12 years ago when they got in touch because they wanted to record a tune of mine, which is very honorific. You know, how nice when somebody wants to record your music, play your music. I was so honored and delighted when I heard the recording. I thought, well, sure, these players in Japan, I don't know them. I'd love to have you play my music. And then when they sent me the recording, I was just absolutely amazed at the way they treated the tune, and I don't know, it brought a life to it. So I was once again surprised and delighted when they contacted me a few years later. They were making a new album and they wanted to record another one of my tunes. At this point now, we were kind of communicating frequently. We had kind of hit it off just via email. So then when they contacted me more recently and said, we're going to make a new album, we'd love for you to write a tune for the album, and we'd love for you to join us in Japan to play the music. What an opportunity. So it was really through this sort of remote recording and then sort of overseas correspondence. And this was sort of before the social media way of getting in touch was firmly in place, really. So it was direct communication and really sort of specific projects. So we recorded together remotely before we even ever met. And so by the time I got to meet them in 2019 was the first time I went over. By the time I got to meet them, it felt like sort of visiting old friends, we already knew each other.
Yeah, how nice is that? So there's, especially nowadays, there's so many ways to talk about how the internet and the sort of digital media takes over our lives too much, but it also presents these really like life affirming opportunities too. And I love the connection from moving from remote to meeting up in person. Did you notice any change, anything that felt especially unique about being there with them in person and playing together?
I mean, outside of the usual, being in person with somebody and playing music with them in person, outside of that, just getting to know them a little bit more as people, as parents. When I first went over, Yuka and Koji so there are two bands actually that we've gotten to know, and there's a lot of band member overlap. So two of the members married, had one kid at the time. Because they had their one little kid, we needed a childminder to travel with us. So we traveled all around the country with four musicians, one child, and one childminder. So it was like, the six of us traveling together, family style. An amazing way to visit a country, an amazing way to get to know people. It's very intimate. It's very fun. Have to be very flexible when you're traveling with kids. You have to be willing to, play and get out and take breaks and be a little inconvenienced at times. I know this because when our child was 2 years old, we traveled all around Germany and Switzerland for 6 weeks with a couple of other bands. And the other musicians were just so patient and so kind with us, traveling as a family. So it was, I got to see on the other side of it how actually it's a bit joyful to travel with a family. So yeah, I think it's quite a bit different to get to know somebody in person that way. And it was an interesting way to go to Japan for the first time. I'd been in the Narita airport probably 12 times in my life, but never had gone into the country. So it was just, everything was new for me: language, food, meeting all of these people who are dedicated to Irish music. There's a big scene over there, thanks in part to these guys in the band Ojizo and to a few other players in Osaka, to Hatao, to Tomoaki Hatekiyama, and folks before them who have really worked hard to teach people and welcome people in to Irish music. So it was really cool to just meet a bunch of people who are into Irish music. It's just that they're all speaking Japanese, and we had a great time. I was again honored. People would come to the sessions and they had albums of mine that they'd purchased, and they knew some of the tunes that I'd written, which is just, wow, just how cool and lovely is that? So yeah, it was, I think we'll learn more about each other when they come to visit us and stay with our family.
Hmm. Yeah, that's terrific. I wonder, so obviously I do want to bring it back to Peaks here for a moment too, but I wonder what it was like to be in another country where you're an American and you're playing Irish music and you're going to sort of a third country and meeting folks there who've kind of adopted it, right? In a sense of like really experiencing it and following the scene. What was that like for you? Is that something that you've experienced before? You said that you've traveled before as a musician as well.
Yeah, I've done a lot of traveling, and I think if in 2019 when I first went to Japan, if it had been my first time experiencing Irish music outside of Ireland and the States, I might have been more flabbergasted. I don't know. I know that there are Irish musicians who are quite fascinated at the idea of Irish music being played in other places. This is an adopted music for me. I'm an American playing Irish music, so I have a lot in common with my friends who come from other places. We kind of learned it the same way. We got the Irish music bug. We spent a lot of time going to Ireland and learning over there, but also mostly just a lot of time listening to recordings and working in our own little homes, year after year after year. So when I think about it that way, it's really not that exotic. Also, my husband Matt and I have run this online Irish music session. We started it in March 2020 when everything had closed down. We started it as this sort of, temporary panic to try to pull a few local players together. And to our surprise, on my YouTube channel, we had people tuning in from all over. In the chat, there'd be, hello, it's Guillermo from Spain. Hi, it's Aga from Poland. Hi, it's Alex Zhang in China. Like, wow, this is amazing. People are all over. So I guess it helped me to realize that my fascination with people playing Irish music all over the place is just sort of my own small worldview. There are people who play this music and who have played this music for a long time, of course, ever since Irish people started traveling or being forcibly removed or, seeking refuge outside of Ireland, this music has definitely transcended geography and DNA. It's played all over. So yeah, I guess it's less of a point of fascination now and just more exciting for me to get a chance to be, the ambassador that I can be in the same way that Kozo, Koji, and Hiro are ambassadors of Irish music. They happen to be from Japan and they're these Irish music ambassadors traveling around. I'm the same. I was actually just in Thailand, where I lived as a child. And there's a scene starting up in Thailand too. So I'm really excited and honored to be part of, I think, a scene that might be growing there too. And it's working just the way that it does in many places, which is, you get a few people interested, they do a lot of homework, and they do their what they can to welcome other people in, teach the music to other people, provide opportunities for people to learn, and maybe also give a little bit of the social context for this music because, Irish music isn't really a style of music. It's a social tradition. It's a community-based folk event, that is intergenerational and is at this point international. And so I think encouraging people to be part of sort of the social fabric of it too. I think that's a big part of the teachers. And I think that's what they're trying to do over there is really get people into enjoying the social experience of the session. It's not just about, playing these tunes or learning this style, but about entering into this whole social experience together, which people can be part of, whether they play the music or not. So when we're on Peaks Island, for example, I know there are musicians there, and it'll be fun to share some of these tunes, and I think they'll hear them on one level. And I know there are a lot of people who don't play this music who I think they can't help but pick up on the fact that there's kind of a lot of, social connection and friendship behind all of the music. Even if they don't know that overtly, I think they'll pick up on it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And the music too is tied in so many different ways to, cultural experiences and stories as well. One of the things I noted when I was looking at your website was that you do a lot of that weaving. You weave the music and the storytelling. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that for you and for your performances?
Well, again, Irish music is more than just music. It's about a shared body of music that we play together that helps sustain communities during times of duress, during times of famine, during times of fascism, during times of displacement. The hemorrhage of emigration really inspired some beautiful songs. It's a great coping mechanism. It's a great way to document history. As Frank Hart said, those in history, those in power write the history. Those who suffer write the songs. And so I think there's a joy, actually, and a resilience in sometimes sharing some of these desperately sad songs because it's a way to kind of keep the power and keep the narrative and to share it. And again, whether you know a lot about Irish music or you don't, I think you hear these songs and I think some of that comes through. So I feel very, very passionate about sharing that concept, about sharing some of the stories bundled behind the music, about showing people, not just telling, but showing people how it's more than just some catchy melodies. And it's definitely more than just St. Patrick's weekend. Yeah. So I love doing that in my podcast, Irish Music Stories. I love doing that on stage. That's an opportunity. You're sharing something. Why not give a little context behind it? I love doing it in sessions just by having a chat. Sometimes when I'm in an informal Irish music session in a town that doesn't have a lot of Irish music, sometimes people are very excited and a little impatient to play tune after tune after tune. And I purposely kind of take a lot of time in between the sets of tunes and I make jokes and I bring people into the conversation, kind of stubbornly so. Kind of if somebody's eager to go into another tune, I say, yeah, what about this one? And I interrupt them. Again, just because I love this idea of sharing the bigger picture behind it and getting as much joy out of it as we can together, using it as a connecting tool. And when I'm visiting a place where people maybe don't have that maybe, just maybe after I leave, maybe they'll do that just a little bit. I mean, I think these simple, simple tunes can have great power in bringing people together and helping people endure hard times and enjoy good ones. And I have to say, Hito and Koji and Kozo with Ojizo, like Matt and I, really love sharing this with people in a room and really love the chat between the songs and the tunes. In Irish music, songs have words, tunes are the instrumental ones. We make a difference. But Kozo has quite a lot of facility in English, and the other guys are working on it. They might be a little bit limited in being able to share everything that they do back home. They're so funny on stage. They're so easygoing and so incredibly poised in their chat on stage in Japan. We've seen them numerous times. But I think here, even with some limitations of the language, I think it'll come across. They are just very fine performers, and not just about the music, just about the whole presentation and sharing. They're wonderful.
Awesome. So there's a wide spectrum, really, obviously, of Irish music. And you've talked a little bit about how there are songs of distress and there's, songs of endurance and that sort of thing. And then there's more joyful music too. When you're looking at that catalog and at the repertoire that you and your husband and also the folks in Ojizo have, how do you select those in 2026?
That's a great question, and I think it's different all the time. I was just in Thailand, where I spent a bit of my childhood, and I did some performances over there, and I was very careful to include the song Bua Khao, which was UNESCO's Song of Asia in 1979, because the United States has just left UNESCO for the third time, which is very shameful and very sad. So I wanted to kind of highlight something that I felt was very important, supporting cultural programming, which UNESCO does, and which James Fulbright thought to do when he established his amazing Fulbright program. So sometimes I have maybe an agenda like that. If there's something that I just feel like I want to speak to, instead of saying, I think it's shameful we've left UNESCO. And I think we should really give more money to arts programming, because that's a much cheaper way to promote world peace and understanding. Diplomacy is much cheaper than building an army. Instead of saying that, I sing Bua Khao. So I think letting the music kind of say what it needs to, for whatever a moment might be facing, or for whatever turmoil or celebration we in our family might be facing. A lot of selection goes on off stage, and maybe people won't even know the reasons why we, selected X, Y, or Z. But then when it comes time to present it all, maybe we just think of honest and skillful ways to present things, so they're not heavy-handed, so we can kind of enjoy metaphor and not get bogged down by it, but feel uplifted, by hopefully some of the thoughtfulness behind those selections. So I love your question, why select anything? Why perform music? Why get together and share things? I mean, I think we have a lot of reasons for that. And this repertoire is so vast. There's always something to choose from to meet that moment.
Do you have any sort of insights that you want to share about the types of music you're bringing to Peaks, or do you want to sort of leave that for the day of?
Well, we're one thing that I love about this band, Ojizo, is they've got just such beautiful sense of arranging. They have some really fun, fast numbers that just feel great to hear, to play along with. So we're going to play some of that together with the two bands, and that's really looking forward to that. And they're also just really great at creating textures and sort of taking time and space with things. And so we have some really pretty slower pieces that we've selected, just sort of thinking of this time of year, this transition into spring, being in sort of a craggy, sort of windswept, sort of more remote location, sort of music that resonates there. So yeah, a mix of upbeat stuff and some slower, beautiful, resonant stuff, but kind of thinking of this particular part of the world. So we'll see how it rings on Peaks Island.
I love the thought and the creativity that goes into that to picking sort of based on the geography in addition to, the temporal, time that we're in. So I'd love to talk a little bit about your personal history of the music. There are two things that you had mentioned earlier that I have been dying to follow up on. The first is you said that you had spent a bunch of your childhood in Thailand. How was it that you and your family were in Thailand, and how did that impact your sort of like musical environment? Like how did that affect your early antenna for listening to music?
Oh, I love that. My early antenna was really developed because of the early travels with my family. So many people coming from outside of Ireland have stories about how they got into the music. Many people within Ireland too have stories about it because not everybody in Ireland plays Irish music. It's still a niche thing over there too. So for me, my parents were journalists. And when they had a Fulbright position to teach at the University of Nigeria at Nsukka, they wanted me to have a music study. And so they found someone in our neighborhood who taught the piano. You get Brazil. And I went over and I had a couple piano lessons. And then one day I saw she had a tin whistle on the piano and I picked it up and I played a tune that my grandpa had showed me when I was really tiny. I was 8 years old at this point. And she said, "Ah, you are not a piano player. You are a wind player. I will teach you tunes." And so I learned my first tunes in Nigeria from Huguette Brazin, who was from Belgium. And, I kicked around with that when we got back to the States. We did a lot more traveling because they were writing a book on Native American journalism. And so we spent a lot of time um, in the southwestern United States where I heard a lot of wind players. I heard a lot of Navajo storytellers and wind players. And all of that was also just sort of shared by ear. So when I was first an exchange student in Thailand, when I was 16 years old, I lived with a family that I became very, very close with. I had a sister a year older than I was, and she introduced me to this music teacher who taught Thai music. And it was all learned by ear. It was these melodies they're Thai melodies, but they were not all dissimilar to the melodies that I learned on my tin whistle. So I started learning those, and I learned to sing a few of those songs. And I got quite interested in it, so much so that after I got back after the year, I went back to study with my Thai teacher. My Thai sister came to live with me for a couple of years. I did some work with the Thai embassy. I got really involved. And then my husband, Matt, and I, through Fulbright, used to do concerts around Thailand. And because I have facility with the language, we were able to go to remote areas. And so I would always be sharing Irish tunes and then have the kids teach me Thai tunes, this exchange kind of a thing. So my Irish music history really is wrapped up in getting involved with music learned by ear in Nigeria and in Thailand. It really wasn't until I landed in Chicago for college that I really started getting serious about Irish flute and spending a lot more time in Ireland. I had been in Ireland, I had learned some Irish tunes, but it really, it was those early experiences in other places where the music was taught by ear, where it was kind of a social music thing that really lit the fire, I think. And I think that's another reason why I love sharing the bigger stories behind this music, like that it's a social thing, because that's how I got into it, was it being this direct passed on from one person to the next social thing.
That's fascinating. So, not to get too far afield, but Booker T of Booker T and the MGs had talked about how he had gone for piano lessons with a teacher, and he had seen this organ, and he had like kind of wanted to ask about it. And then one day he did ask about it, and originally she kind of brushed it off, and then he asked about it again, and she started to teach him. And the way he put it was, for musicians, there's an instrument that reaches out and grabs you. And I wonder if that sort of echoes in your experience. Did you know sort of from the beginning when you had started to play?
Nope. I think it was just an accident. The tin whistle was on the on the piano, and that's what I grabbed. I don't think I thought one way or the other about it. And I do love the flute. I love the expressive capacities that it has. I love how you can kind of shape the tone. I've definitely grown to be most fond maybe of the flute. But I really love the accordion. I really love the fiddle. Maybe if I could start over, would I maybe try the fiddle? It's pretty versatile. I love the flute, but I think it was just an accident.
That's great. I love the dichotomy, the Booker T, like, yes, this is for me. And then like, well, it just kind of happened.
My favorite part about this is that I am in the same podcast. I am in the same conversation as Booker T because he's amazing.
I'm a huge fan of Booker T, and I'm a huge fan of soul music in general. And the interesting things that you talked about in terms of learning by ear in various places, whether it's Thailand, Nigeria, or to some extent from conversations I've had with musicians who play in the sort of Irish or Celtic tradition, a lot of that music is passed down too without sheet music. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on the way that those sort of traditional forms get shared, right? Because we talk a lot about this being a social thing. And is that like part and parcel of it? The fact that it's not necessarily an academic exercise, it's more about the communicating interpersonally.
Yeah, I think the way that it's learned actually is completely important. I think this is not a style of music. This is a social practice. And it's not what you play, it's the way that you learn it. It's the way that you play it. The way that you learn it is the way that you play it. So the way that you learn it, I do think it's super important that it is something that you get directly, that you learn by ear, that you learn by heart, that it goes into your heart, that you really know. When we get together, for social parties, we don't talk off of scripts with one another. We have conversation. And for better and for worse, it's not scripted. Sometimes it's not very elegant. Sometimes we put our foot in our mouths. And it wouldn't work, though, any other way. It's just kind of the way that it goes. When you're involved in a social thing, it's a direct human experience. So there are a lot of collections of sheet music, and now with all the tools, oh my gosh, people have access to this music in notated form readily. And I think that, notating this music has always been an important way to preserve it before we were able to have recordings. I've had people say to me, well, but there are sheet music collections that are much older. And I say, well, yeah, because we didn't have recording technology back then. But even after the advent of recording technology, I do think that these printed collections of tunes can be great for reference. They can be great for cataloging. It's a great, vast repertoire. I probably know thousands of tunes, or at least have known or know about. Can I really nail that many tunes? No, definitely not, because they're always coming and going. Hence, having printed collections can be a great, easy reference. Oh my gosh, that's how that B part of that tune goes. I remember learning that 10 years ago. I used to play it all the time. I totally forgot that it even existed. How great to have a reference. I think, I'm old school. So print is often a really nice way, but whatever your reference is, whether it's, digital or whatever, I think it can be really handy to have some kind of bucket for sure. But that ain't where it's learned. And that's not like a judgment thing, and that's not a snob thing. It's really meant to be an invitation into the full experience. I think if you're not learning it directly and having it go into the heart, you're missing a lot of the good stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a sentiment that I've heard in different forms from other folks who've come out here to perform. So I think you're A, in good company with that, but B, I also think when you think about music, or when I think about music, it is so much more about the emotional connection. So it makes sense that for the people who are performing the music, the people who are playing it, that it would be embodied in that same way for them too. So you talked about your experience in Thailand and Nigeria learning, but when you are either teaching people now or when you're meeting up with people to play, Can you talk a little bit about what that's like? Because again, this is something I've heard from a number of folks, and that people who listen to the show have heard now from a number of guests. But what is it like in that moment where maybe you're meeting somebody for the first time, and to analogize it to the conversation, you're taking those first steps of talking to somebody. How does that come out musically?
I mean, all sorts of ways, just like conversations. And sometimes it can just be like incredible. You've met somebody for the first time. Ideally, before you sat down to play, you grab their name. It's kind of nice social skills. But maybe you didn't. Maybe they were sitting across the room when everybody sat down at first. And then you have this moment where you're just playing this tune together, and it's sort of like, you have a sense of maybe what they're like as a person, just a little bit, in how they play. When they listen to you and respond, and then you listen to them and respond, like they have a little turn of the tune, and maybe you copy that the next time around. But then meanwhile, they were listening to you and they copied your turn, and you have this little moment. It's like communicating on a very, very high level with somebody you've just met. It's very intimate. It's very exciting. It's very challenging. You have to be on your game. And I think that's what motivates a lot of us to get better and better and better, is the more facility you have and the more tunes that you're really able to enjoy on a sort of fluent level, the more deep conversations, the more experiences you can have with like-minded people. And like-minded meaning other people who have spent a lot of time with this music might not have anything else in common. Wow, I might not have met this Estonian plumber who, whose family owns a bakery, and who lives in Lebanon. I might not ever have met him before if it weren't for us getting to play this music. So, yeah, it's very exciting. And I do think that playing in a session, playing in an informal situation like that can be so thrilling, and it's so unscripted. And then performing, commodifying the music, right? Presenting it in a room with a bunch of people who've come to listen to it. I think that can also have just like these really dynamic, magical moments, because everybody in the room is kind of part of it too. It's not just the players. How people are responding. Maybe they're tapping their feet. Maybe they just like really responded to one tune and got excited to this tune that I don't know, maybe you wouldn't have driven it as hard if everybody hadn't been responding to it. I think there is a lot of dynamic, improvisational stuff that goes on, just like in a conversation, with this music, even when it's presented on a stage.
That's neat. So you touched on it a little bit, but how does that feedback work in the moment for you? Like when you're performing in front of an audience, and you notice that the audience is either really into it or maybe they're not giving you a lot for a particular piece. What do you do? How does that impact your performance?
Well, two different ways. I think number one, I often really think of it as I'm playing music with people in the room. I'm not playing music for people, right? This music is folk music. I don't know. I think it's pretty presumptuous for me to play music for people. Maybe they don't even want me to play music for them. So I'm playing music with people in the room. And they're important to me. And it's important that they're in that room with me. And I acknowledge that we're all kind of building it together. So I'm open to them. I don't know. I'm listening for, I'm watching for, I'm aware of maybe how they're responding. And then the other idea that I might have with that is what my friend Dennis Cahill used to always say. And he used to say, well, at the end of the day, somebody's going home happy, and it's going to be me. So in other words, like as long as maybe Matt and Shannon Heaton and their friends Ojizo are happy playing in this space, and we're feeling good and connected with the music and with one another, hey, job well done. We can't control how everybody else is feeling, and it's okay.
That's neat. It hadn't occurred to me that that sort of energy in the room makes that big of an impact. But it's neat it's neat to hear that it does. We talked a bit about your connection with the folks in Ojizo, but one of the things we haven't really explored yet is you and your husband and the way that maybe you connected, but then B, how you connect musically too, and what that's like to have both the relationship and then also the musical relationship too.
Well, I do feel very, very lucky to play music with Matt Heaton. He's a great musician, and I love him a lot. He's a great parent, co-parent with me. We met in Chicago. We were both, he had just finished college at Northwestern University, and that's where I was going. So in Chicago, I was part of the Irish music circle by that point, and Matt was just sort of interested. He had actually taken a couple of tin whistle lessons, and I kind of dragged him in and started going over to Ireland with him, and he really got the Irish music bug. He's also a great rock and roll guitar player. He plays in a surf music band. He, when I met him, was writing music for and recording with a tango band. He has a master's degree in classical guitar. He's also an incredible children musician at this point, something that he started when our kid was little and has really taken it on as a mission. It's his calling. He writes amazing songs for families, gives these really fun expert performances. I love his kid show so much. It's really like nice rockabilly, early jazz, really fun, creative stuff. Very, very talented, very, very flexible, versatile musician. I would say his musical heart is really with Irish music so deeply. And so I think that's another thing that is joyful to share with Matt is just his respect for and his love of Irish music, the music itself, and the whole social network surrounding it. It's a big part of our social lives. Most of our friends are Irish musicians, and I think we love it. So yeah, life is good. Playing as a folky duo, there are times that it's really feels impossible to manage the workload of doing gigs and promoting them and booking them and making tour arrangements can be a little overwhelming. It's just the two of us recording albums, uploading all the music, doing all of our own sales, all of our own distribution. And then, the tech fails sometimes. Right now, my keyboard is not working on my computer. So I'm using voice to text, but then it's not making spaces between the words. And I'm sure these little things happen to everybody. And sometimes when we're in the middle of managing all of them and we're trying to be the most available parents that we can to our 15-year-old son, sometimes it can be a little overwhelming. This is the case for everybody who, has life in this world, in this modern world. But it is interesting to feel some of those tensions and frustrations and overwhelm and still have to get up on stage and connect with this music, hopefully in a joyous way. Sometimes it can be very challenging and it can be a little fake it till you make it.
I love how real that answer was. So I think that there's probably some people who would really think like, oh, that must just be the most amazing thing in the world, right? Like you're both musicians and you both like, who would want anything else, right? But then to understand that, yeah, of course there are going to be those moments too where, especially the sort of administrivia that you talked about, right? Like the keyboard not working and all those things, they can get in the way. And I wonder if that's tougher because both of you are both centered in music, or if you've developed some sort of like ways to be like, hey, we're putting this to the side for now, and we're gonna figure things out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tougher usually because not only are we both in the music, but we are a duo. We have a lot of friends whose partners are musicians, but they play in two different bands. So you don't have to deal with all of it in the moment together. You have one person taking care of the home front for a moment. I think in the end, we've had enough experiences with this now that I think we see that even in those horrible moments, they often, and usually not in the moment, end up being part of, the family lore. They end up being a shared experience, something that we got through that makes us stronger. I mean, I remember early performances beautiful stage, wonderful audience. Everything is perfect. The sound is great. And our child is just being really rambunctious. And I remember, like nursing him to try to get him to calm down and then handing him at the last minute to a friend to take care of our kid while I go off on stage and feeling very distracted and coming out on stage. And my dress was still kind of hanging open. And my husband looked down at me and he was like, "Fix your dress." Which in the moment, I mean, it's hilarious, but also it was terribly embarrassing. And it was distracting. In hindsight, that's like a memory and something that we got through, and everything else seemed easier for the next few days after that. So, yeah, I think it's hard, and I think it's worthwhile.
You mentioned that he plays a series of instruments and also a bunch of different sort of varieties too. But what does he specifically bring to the duo in terms of instrumentation for you?
Yep. So in our duo, Matt plays guitar and bouzouki, and he sings, and I play flute and whistles and accordion, and I sing. And the idea with our duo is we have all these things at our disposal. The idea is to kind of make as much music and also as much space, we can do both, with just two people. That to me is like my favorite band. I mean, it's great. I've played with bigger ensembles, and it's wonderful to have access to all the different textures and colors. And the way that some bands do it is amazing. I love the limitation of there are only two of you, but you can do a heck of a lot with just two people if you're thoughtful about it. And so, yeah, that's a nice challenge.
That's cool. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it like that, but that sort of concept of having the limitation or like the constraint and then like being able to be creative within it seems really exciting and seems like a neat challenge.
Definitely having singing and instrumental music opens up a whole new level of variety.
One of the things that I had read when I looked at your website is about bouzouki and about how it is traditionally not an Irish instrument, somewhat recent to the Irish music scene. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how that came to be. First of all, how the instrument was kind of adopted into Irish music, and then what its role is in Irish music.
I mean, isn't that cool? It is kind of like tying into this idea of people playing Irish music all over the place, too. Amazing practitioners of Irish music and dance based in Japan is not unlike the story of the bouzouki, a Greek instrument that on vacation in the 60s, a couple Irish musicians found, brought back to Ireland, experimented, incorporated it into Irish music. It just so happened that it was Donal Lunny and Andy Irvine who then went on to form very influential Irish music ensembles. And because of their work with the bouzouki, more people and their recordings with Planxty, with Patrick Street, more people began playing bouzouki. As more people played bouzouki in Irish music, instead of the three-course Greek instrument with the bowl back, they flattened the back a bit so that it would project more for Irish music, added another course of strings. So now it's usually 4 courses of strings with a flat back. And it's really an octave, a low octave mandolin. And the way that it's played now in Irish music is kind of a combo of what those guys used to do in the 1960s and how people have incorporated it now. It's a very common instrument in ensembles at this point. The Irish bouzouki, people don't even really like bat an eye. What? A Greek instrument? What? A musician from Japan? What? An Irish flute player from Boston? It's just, it is amazing how the music just kind of grows and expands and develops, and how quickly how quickly people adjust. How quickly people have adjusted to adding, the guitar to Irish music. They started in the 1920s with the recording, well, even before then, but I mean, it became more well known in the 1920s, and now, 100 years later, it's here.
When you hear about Irish music, you often hear about Irish music in the context of like trad music, right? Or being traditional. And it occurs to me that as you're talking about this and the way that Irish music has traveled and sort of, collected various things, whether it's instruments or different ways of approach, that traditional might in some ways be a little bit of a misnomer. It seems like it's ever growing. Is that your experience of it?
Well, it's a living tradition. Yes. And it's sort of like the word culture, right? People don't really use the word culture when they're inside of it. It's when you're on the outside that you use it to describe, this is Mexican culture. But like in Mexico, they don't, they're not talking about culture, right? Yeah, the word tradition can be so loaded. Really, it's just sort of a shorthand way to say well worn, enduring practice versus popular music. Pop music is ephemeral. Traditions are enduring. Traditional practices are enduring. And the Irish music tradition is a living one that is always being added to. People are constantly writing new tunes and absorbing them, passing them around. So much so that there are many tunes we play now that are like the Torn Jacket is a beloved Irish reel in the key of D. Many Irish musicians know this tune. It was written in 1986 by Connie O'Connell. That's not that long ago. There are other tunes that have been written even more recently. But I mean, we're quick to pick things up. We're quick to adopt them into this practice. And that's all part of this living tradition.
That's wonderful. Thank you for describing it that way. I frankly had never heard anyone talk of it that way before, and that's a great way to look at it.
Cool. Yeah, I liked it. Let's quote me on that.
So also one of the things that I've noticed is just how easily this conversation flows. And I think maybe part of that comes from the fact that you also are a podcaster. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your podcast, especially because it also relates to something that people that are going to be hitting play on this podcast are interested in, right? Which is Irish music.
Well, it's funny. Somebody was just asking me about Irish music stories, and she asked me about how I record the podcast, which I do at home. And when I make this podcast, it's not just conversations with people. I take a theme, I talk to a few musicians about that theme, and then I weave it all together. And I usually have like a central narrative through the whole thing. So it's fun and it's listenable. I want it to be punchy. So it's edutainment. Is that it? Infotainment. So it is educational, I suppose. You learn a lot about Irish music, but you don't have to know about Irish music to listen. It's just, as I say, and this is what I showed my friend. When I'm recording my podcast, I use this big heavy blanket so that the sound is a little bit better. And so I begin every episode like this. I'm Shannon Heaton, and this is Irish Music Stories, the show about traditional music and the bigger stories behind it. With the blanket over my head like that. And it's funny, the blanket is for soundproofing the room. But also, once I have the blanket on, I do feel like I'm entering into this space of like telling people, of bringing people into this kind of intimate, warm, sustaining practice that is about tunes and songs and people dancing through all sorts of times of trial and joy. And there is just so much more to this community activity than just a pile of tunes. It's more than just the music. So that's what the podcast is about. And that's how I try to tell those stories. But I have to say, it's not just what you say. It's how you say it, right? It's not just what you play. It's how you say it. It's how you learn it. And so putting the blanket on over the head sort of gets me into podcaster space.
So tell me a little bit about why you wanted to start the podcast. Or was it just that you had sort of been brimming with these ideas and these stories and this was a good outlet for it? Or was there some other reason?
Yeah, I think being the child of writers, I've always sort of had an interest and an appreciation of the power of documenting, of writing stories, of telling stories, of sharing stories. My parents wrote a book called Let My People Know, which was the story of Native American journalism from 1880 to 1980. And in order to recreate this story, they actually had to go from reservation to reservation, from reporter to reporter, to reconstruct because our archives were incomplete. There were huge collections of there were clippings, on microfilm at that time of Navajo presses, of Apache presses at the University of Oklahoma, at the University of Wisconsin, I think were two big ones. But then there would be like 15 years that were just missing. So my parents reconstructed that history. My parents with help, they were the general contractors, and a whole team of people helped to reconstruct all of that, which was incredible. And I guess early on, I kind of got the message that this is something important. It's important to hold on to history. It's important to document when people are hurt, when things are taken away from people, even if nothing can be done about it. It's still important to have that on record. So it's also important to have on record, when things are going well. It's important to recognize people who have done important things, even if they're behind the scenes guys who don't really want any credit. It's important for somebody to be there taking notes. Once again, those in power write the history, but those who suffer write the songs. Those in power might write the history for a time being, but those on the ground, those who are writing the stories, and keeping track, like they're doing really important, uplifting work too, even if that doesn't have resonance immediately. So yeah, a podcast format. And again, I started this in a podcast format, and I started this in 2017. I started in 2016. And a podcast format seemed like the right way that I could share stories. And I could also, of course, weave in some music. It would be a great way for me to show instead of just tell. It would be a great way to also have some ambient sounds to really bring people into the natural world of it. I mean, that's also another aspect of Irish music that's important to me. There is a very long abiding tradition of reverence for the natural world. There are so many ballads, there are so many tunes that reference very, very particular birds, very particular botanical features, botanical plants, and natural and mystical features. And so I really I think a great way to tell stories about the outside world is if you can hear wind, if you can hear birds, if you can hear, things like that. So yeah, it's an endlessly creative way without images. I think is powerful too, because then people really have to it goes into the heart, it goes into the ears, it goes into the heart. It's really direct, like learning Irish music is. And there's no distraction of, what it looks like.
That's so great. Yeah, and certainly not to put anything, not to say anything disparaging about writing and print, because I love books and I love reading and writing. But I think the way that you're talking about this um, really shows just how sort of connected it is to that idea of heart, right? And bringing things to life in a different way. And I wonder if that's maybe why this wasn't a blog.
I think so. And also there are a lot of people who have such wisdom. And I have learned so much by doing this and chatting with people, and continue to learn. Some of those people are just the most incredible storytellers, and they are never going to write these things down. So if it's up to me to tell their stories, I'm going to just tell it in my way. I love writing. I love just writing. I don't have to podcast. I think the writing would be great, but then it would shut off all of everybody else's ways of telling the stories. So I think that's the most important element of this, is it's a way to hear other people talking about this stuff in their own ways. And then the narrative that I weave through, that's my own little business, that's my own style. And I really love the writing part of it the best. But yeah, getting to have other people tell the stories in their voices, that's essential.
So for folks who are thinking like, "Ooh, I want to listen to this podcast," where should they start? Do you have like a couple of episodes that you would tell people like, "Ooh, if you really want to know what this is about, here's where to start"?
I don't know. I guess just go to irishmusicstories.org and listen to what grabs you. I think they were all pretty special, and they've all been really different. I think it's going to depend on what you're into. There are so many every episode is a different theme. So, Not Easy Being Green is about sustainable practices in Irish music, for example. Irish music in the key of P is about parenting and Irish music. The long arm of the tradition is how this music has been played and it continues to be played all around the world. So lots and lots of gems out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds fascinating. It sounds like there's something for everybody.
One of my very favorites that I just came across again is Songs of Cattle and Copper, which was about Irish music in Wales, which is about traditional music in Wales. It's about music from Wales, which is something I didn't know a lot about. And speaking of developing relationships with people like I have with Ojizo, over years of correspondence because we got in touch about music. Some of the people that I got in touch with and interviewed for that show, Carrie Reese Matthews, a wonderful flute player, we continue to correspond, and he also likes writing, so we send each other things that we've written. And he's just treasurable, and I never would have known him, I think, if it hadn't been for making that podcast together. So that was one of my all-time favorites.
Wonderful. Well, this has been truly a really delightful conversation, and I'm really excited for you to come out to Peaks. And I think a lot of folks out here who love this concert series that Ellen puts on are really, really excited to hear and to see. And thank you so much for providing the background and for providing really just the context for the way that people can experience this music. It's been really enlightening.
Oh, thanks for chatting. And thanks to Ellen for taking a chance on all this different music that she brings to Peaks Island. It's such a variety. And I know she has like an eye for quality, so she knows like whatever she's presenting is going to be good. And I just love that she has the faith in that and that people have faith in her, that it's going to be a special evening. So we are really honored to get to bring our show to Peaks Island.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Possessed of great beauty, stood at her own father's gate, while the gallant hussars were on duty. To view them this maiden did wait. Their horses were dancing and prancing, their accoutrements shone like a star. As they stood nearer advancing, Jane spied her gallant hussar. Palaces hung on their shoulders, so careless they seemed for to ride. So warlike appeared this young soldier, his glittering sword by his side. To the barracks next morning so early, this damsel she went in her car, because she loved him sincerely, Edward, a gallant hussar. She conversed with her soldier, these words she was heard for to say. Said Jane, I've heard no one bolder to follow my laddie away. Oh come now, says Edward, be steady and think of the dangers of war. When the trumpet sounds I must be ready, so wed not your gallant hussar. Find me for you. They're hard-hearted friends to their daughter, whose heart shall stay loyal and true. Unless they confine me forever, or banish me from you afar, I will follow my soldier so clever, and wed with my gallant hussar. Oh, your parents you're bound for to mind them, or else you're forever undone. They will leave you no fortune behind them, so pray you my company shun. Said she, if you will be true-hearted, I've gold of my uncles in store. From this time no more will be parted. Won't you wed with me, gallant hussar?
Those two pieces were Gallant Husser from Matt and Shannon Heaton. That's off their album Tell You in Earnest. It's a traditional tune arranged by the Heatons. And that was also Ojizo, the slower tune. It's from the album Via Portland. It's composed by Hirofumo Nakamura. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you liked this, I bet you'll like a lot more of our interviews as well. You can sign up for our email list by going to peaksislandradio.com. You can subscribe via email, or you can find us in your favorite podcast app and just hit the follow button.